Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Gaming Podcast. Once again, I'm Bradley and I believe he's been let out of his metaphorical prison this weekend. It's Stu. How you doing, Stu, on day release?
Yeah, not too bad. You know, it's probably questionable to let me out of anything, like contracts, prison terms, anything like that, really. But yeah, I'm here. I'll make the best of it, and I'll try not to get rearrested.
Fair enough. And you've got a free day or free weekend this weekend?
Yeah, I've got a bank holiday for the first time in 2 years. It's going to be like a proper one. Like I can properly relish it and enjoy it. So that's so cool.
So are you going to have jobs or are you going to be pants and games?
Well, why not both? Is the question I ask.
Just don't do pants and outside jobs. People frown upon that.
I know, but I don't care. You know, I'm very body confident. Yeah. No, it'll probably be going out into the wild and going to look at nice things in pleasant country scenes. I think
into the wild lands of Cheshire.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like a jungle out there, man.
It would be if you went down to Cheshire Oaks. It'll be probably insane at the weekend.
Oh, the idea of that on a bank holiday makes me want to just cry.
Yeah, I will stay at home. I'll take everything off, wear pants, and play some retro video games.
Hell yes.
Talking of video games, this is a video game show. I've been playing quite a bit this week because I've been playing catch up because my vision's improved again. But yourself, Stu, been playing much?
Every time you say playing catch up, I have to force myself not to make the crap joke of, I've not heard of that one. But with that done and out of the way, I've been playing one game really heavily and two that this week is going to be played really heavily this weekend. So I've been playing Bravely Default 2 on my new Switch.
Yes.
So I loved the first one of that. I caned it. I spent about 90 hours on it when you only need about 30 or 40 to complete it. So I haven't touched Bravely Second just simply because I only need one of these games every few years, and it's just as a few years were rolling out, Bravely Default 2 came out, so I've started on this. So yeah, I'd been playing it on the bus. It's a perfect bus game because you don't have to worry about every time you go down a pothole, which they're often several feet deep, that you will miss your timing and ruin your game. So yeah, no, it's really good.
It is. Bravely Default 2 isn't actually the second game, is it? It's something like the third or fourth.
Yeah, to my knowledge, it's the third main
conventions.
Yeah, it's because the second game, Bravely Second, I think was more of a kind of, because I think it was meant to be quite similar to the first one, that it wasn't classed as a true sequel, whereas this is. I think that's how it works. But it's actually the third main game, I think. Yeah, it's basically a classic JRPG in the classic Final Fantasy style. The main quirk being two quirks. One is that it's nabbed the job system from the earlier Final Fantasies that they kind of didn't bother with in the later ones. And it's got this default system where you can choose to basically block for a round, but you kind of bank an action and then you can choose to spend those actions at another time. So if you've got a character that's really weak but very good with sorcery and wizardry, you can like default and then bank up a load of attacks and then do them at once, or you can just use your regular guys to spam. It's just clever, and doing the banking thing is called defaulting, and using the actions is called brave, hence the name. So it's, apart from that, it's classic RPG. You're on a mission to save the world. It's cutesy sprites, well, polygons, but I call them sprites, and it's very good.
And I know the developers, I've got to respect the developer that just looks at what the game does and goes, yeah, that'll do for a name.
I know.
Because I know they've got another one coming out they're working on that, again, is just like, it's just named after whatever the mechanics are. So it's to do with like a triangular type feature or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it's like, I've got to respect it. It's like someone releasing a football game and just going, yeah, we've called it kick goal.
Yeah, well, shooty guns for an FPS and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or for sort of like, instead of Gears of War, they call it crouch down and shoot.
Yeah, no hit reactions. That's what Gears of War should be called.
But yeah, I've got to respect it. I've tried Bravely Default a little while back, and I couldn't get into it because it is a JRPG, arse JRPG.
Yep.
And my mind back then was struggled with those sort of games. But I might, at some stage when I see it in a sale, pick up Bravely Default 2 and try and jump into that.
Yeah, I would recommend having a go. It's really simple, which is, that's the thing. RPGs, you tend to think, as time has progressed, they've got more complicated. They've got, complicated is the wrong word, more sophisticated, I suppose is a better word. More sophisticated, and the stuff that annoys you is kind of stripped away, and it's moving more towards a kind of Mass Effect real-time style, even in the classic Final Fantasy series. And this is not that. This is like proper, like you select stuff from a menu and you wait for it to play out. But it does have a lot of good quality of life stuff. So there's, just like the previous games on the 3DS, you can change the speed of the battles so that they whiz through really quick. You can avoid battles without having to do it from the menu. Like, creatures appear on the map and you can choose to have those fights or not, apart from the odd ones. And just tons of little quality of life stuff that erases the irritations of the early Final Fantasy games, for example. So it's not stuck in the past in a bad way. It's just sort of looking to the past and picking out the nice stuff. And it's not the most beautiful game. It's lovely design, just like the first two games, but they kind of really pushed the 3DS and they looked lovely, whereas this underutilises the Switch, so it only looks okay.
They like chibi sprites type thing.
Yeah, that's right. Tiny little arms and legs and big heads and
big heads and eyes and
it's,
if it's one of my biggest problems with, I think, Final Fantasy X and 12 and stuff like that, one of my biggest problems I ever had with those was there was just too many mechanics going on and having to give your party jobs and the way you had to manage your party. And it took me ages, actually, a ridiculously and embarrassingly long time to realise what jobs were in an RPG, and it wasn't actually about jobs. It's just something to do with like what skills and stuff they actually have.
Character classes, and
it was like, and that confused me for a long time. But they just get too much. But I'm going to talk about this down the line about ADHD gaming and why I struggle with certain games. And the old RPGs, that was one of them, because there was just too many mechanics that you had to manage at one time. So if Bravely Default 2 has slimlined that or streamlined it a little bit, then that's something maybe I might dive back into.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating that what you mentioned about ADHD there, because it's just like, where do you draw the line between what a person with one type of neurological wiring does and what another does? Because I'm exactly the same as you with stuff. I will start playing something and I'll go, that mechanic I hate, and I can't rationalise it and I can't really understand it. I mean, I can come on here and go, oh, bloody, bloody, blah, this is why. But, it's sort of 90% lying to myself. It's just an emotional gut reaction. And I'm like, I can't really justify it because it's a good game, but I don't want to play it. So, the shorthand of that is you're totally justified, no matter what the reason, for not liking any game or any game genre, really.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think, comes down to the way it's set in the world and other things like that, because Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion is a fantastic game. I can't deny it's a fantastic game. But I could not for the life of me get my head around it, despite it being ostensibly identical to Fallout 3. in terms of structure and overall mechanics and things like that. It's just, but I could understand Fallout because of the way it used those mechanics and the way they put those into almost like a real world scenario. So when it comes to the fantasy stuff, I struggle. Put it in a real world context, all over it, absolutely fine. And I think that's the same when it comes to JRPGs. The more modern they are, so the Tokyo Mirage Sessions, I'm okay with. I'm getting on with that because it's set in like modern day-ish Japan, alternate worlds and stuff like that. And but the Persona series, Persona 4, definitely, you know, I get that, but more fantasy stuff along those same sort of lines, yeah, those just does not sink in at all.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I don't like the modern Japanese RPGs, mainly because they're more like strategy games. I think that people see them as, oh, you've got more real-time control, means that they're more like action RPGs, but they're really not. Because it's more like you create a strategy. You go, I want you to do this and be a tank for this long, and then be an attacking force for that long, whilst this person is, you know, a poisoner and does this and walks around the side, and then you set that in motion and you see what happens. Well, that's like Football Manager, you know. That's not like a real-time RPG. You know, that's not Zelda. That's, you know, that's strategy, and I don't like that. Whereas RPGs are, you know, I want to use this thing and the outcome will be variable, as opposed to action games, which are, I shoot a gun and it has one effect, and, you know, it's down to skill of how quickly you can deploy that effect. So yeah, I think I'm quite kind of impressed by how the Japanese developers have shifted the goalposts, and to a degree the West are not following it at all, because like stuff like, I don't know, what is a modern Western RPG? I'm terrible at remembering them.
I think you're still looking at stuff like Mass Effect and stuff like that. It's really
Skyrim,
the closest you'll get,
yeah, and they're action RPGs, aren't they? Really, they're kind of the emphasis is on the action, and even, you know, The Witcher to a certain degree, although that's much more in the action side than the RPG side.
But just to cover the ADHD side very briefly, because I don't want to go into it too. For anyone who thinks that, I'm not saying that every game out there's got to cater for someone who has ADHD or anything. That is why I don't like certain. I struggle with certain games. I don't like them. I appreciate how good they are, but I struggle with certain games. And I think there's some things that can be done in certain genres and certain games that can help people like me. But I'm not saying that every game has to sort of streamline and cater to me at the same time. So, but we'll cover this in a future episode.
Yeah, definitely.
Talking of convoluted mechanics, because I was going to talk about this one last, but I can segue into it. A nice seamless segue, although I'm explaining what a segue is, which takes out the seamlessness of it somewhat. Yeah, I've been playing Quinterra, which is it's a strategy roguelike deck building turn-based game, which when I heard about it I thought, oh, it's going to be right up my street. I like deck building, I like roguelite and things like that, and the concept of the game is fine. It's like, so basically you have to like build this army, and then you have to sort of like go through these missions and things like that. And instead of being like deck building purely in the same way as Slay the Spire or something like that, you kind of use your cards as moves, and then you have a tactics style board, so like a Final Fantasy Tactics thing, but hexagonal shapes, and you move around and you have to get into position and stuff like that. And if it was just that side of it, the cards and the turn-based tactics side of it, and that would be brilliant. I think I would really get onto it. But there's elements of deck building, city building in a way, managing different equipment. You create minions that go with it as well. You've got these crystals that can have different things that go on. And then obviously you've got the turn-based tactical side of stuff, and you've got to manage morale and everything. There's just so much going on that I was playing each one and I felt like I needed a guidebook or a tutorial running for every single game I played of this, because there was just so much I had to manage and so much I had to deal with for a game that should have been quite simple. And alongside that, it's not just those are the mechanics, but there's 4 different classes within it as well that each have a differing effect with how you play the game. And again, it's just got too much for me to really cope with. And it's a shame because the maps are really good, the battles are really good, it's well presented, and each individual mechanic works really, really, really well. But it's just too much. Again, if you take it down to a sports level, it's like deciding that you're going to... Do you know the film Basketball?
I do. I love that film.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. But it's taking like rips out sort of like, oh, there's bits of baseball in there, bits of basketball, these other homemade sports, and they throw it all into one. And the way they talk about the rules is this really sort of like confusing mess of rules. But that's part of the joke. Well, that's what this game almost is. It's taken so many different elements that you can't actually explain the game to anybody.
Yeah, a few things. Nope. I'm noping out of this one. I mean, I can't even if it was a good example of the genre, like it did stuff really well. Nah, I'm done. Told you, 2021, done with any roguelites. Yep. Deck building games, I might well be done with forever. You know, I'm kind of there. That's where I am at the moment. B, my main takeaway is that I'm watching Basketball tonight because that film's superb.
Yes.
But
yes, I think that might be on the dock. I might see if I can convince the family. Yes,
totally. Oh, it's so good. But it's kind of, I can imagine that when the developers were doing it, it's like, oh, we got these brilliant ideas, we can make them work, and then just the daily grind and the cost and the length of time before publishing just meant the ideas either got watered down or they couldn't get perfected, or just that when they brought them all together they didn't really work the way they wanted, you know.
So that's the thing. If they was watered down, I'd probably be a bit more forgiving, but they're not. That's the thing about it. Yeah. Each individual thing is well fleshed out and works really well in isolation. Just all together it doesn't. And I'm going to talk it straight away after this one, actually, before you get onto your next stuff. I'll talk about another deck building game that absolutely nails it. But yeah, it's just this, I want to like it. And I had to go and check other reviews in the end because I had to go and look, was it me? Is there something wrong with me? And it's generally got positive reviews. But there's a lot of people, when they are talking about the game, making excuses for it. A guy, yeah, but you know, once you get over this is the really good bit, or you can you focus on this bit. I was like, no, not really. And it's maybe it wasn't for me, but I don't want to like dump on it because it's not a bad game. You can tell it's been made with love, and the attention that's gone into absolutely everything is there for all to see. But yeah, it's just so convoluted and packed with stuff that I just couldn't get into it at all, unfortunately. But if you do want to try it, it's out on Steam, and it's just over 11 quid, I think. So, you know, it's early access still. So I suppose I should say that it's not a review, it is early access. So maybe this is stuff that will be streamlined or fixed on final release. But it's okay. It's okay for what it is, just not for me. Bit convoluted, but hopefully they fix it.
There's a good question in there, I think, and this is a question for the audience as much as it is for you. How many games have you backed or seen backed in early access that had problems that were then fixed by the full release? I'm guessing that it's probably only about 50-50, but the ones that did manage it ended up being really great, like Hades. But yeah, interesting.
So, well, you almost make the great segue for me then, because the other the other roguelike deck building game I've been playing, finally getting into it, is Fights in Tight Spaces,
right?
Which is still in early access, and it's a roguelike deck building game. But this very much takes the mechanics of a Monster Train or Slay the Spire and just puts you in a different world with it. So essentially, you've got these slight bits that there is some more elements than just playing your cards and getting the right. I keep saying cohesion, but I can't remember what the actual thing is where you get the cards that work well together. My mind really gone blank with what that actually term is for that.
Cohesion's good, but complementary maybe? Or
No. I can't remember what it was. Emailing podcast@mentalhealthgaming.com to tell me how stupid I am and what it is. But yeah, the cohesiveness of the cards and building that out is similar to Slay the Spire. So you'll get certain moves that will work well with other moves within the deck and stuff like that. But because you've got these like this actual sort of like brawling mechanic in there, so you're like you literally are in a small room like a bar or something like that, and you're taking on one person or two or three or whatever. There is some ways like you move here and you might get a better angle, but it's not fully tactical. So it's really simplified that bit down just to give you some advantages. And okay, you build your deck and you kind of go, do I go with throw everything at it and build it that way to just pummel, or do I use just certain cards where possible and things like that? Really well presented. Everything's really simplified. It doesn't actually feel like a deck building game, even though it is extensively a deck building game in the vein of Slay the Spire. Even the progression is for it. You've got like this branching map that you go through, and some will go, you take on these enemies, and then you take on maybe a boss enemy, or you can go this way and you might get a scenario that can reward you or punish you, or there's these chests that will give you extra cards and you get the rewards after every battle. So all that side of it is all in there, but it's just so well presented. And again, this is the difference between it's an early access game. You've got your various different classes, but everything makes sense in the world, and they've not added a whole bunch of stuff it doesn't need. Now, at the moment, I might be wrong with this. I don't know if it's added or whether I'm misreading it. Unlike Slay the Spire, where as the more you play it, the more you get some permanent unlocks, this doesn't look like it's got any permanent card unlock. So everything you earn, you have to earn from scratch again with each new run. But it's got this really interesting mechanic to it as well. And I don't know if this is on purpose or if this is something they will fix by the final release. But the one thing that does save is your chapter progression. So you could go through to maybe chapter 2, for example, and die in chapter 2. And instead of going back to the beginning of the first chapter, you can start from fresh again at chapter 2. But it means you'll be completely overwhelmed by the battles and the enemies, because you've got your base cards again, which is why I don't know if I'm missing something with maybe permanent unlocks or something like that. Now, that's a bit frustrating, but again, my thing to that is I'll just go back to the beginning. I won't start halfway through because I'm just going to get my arse handed to me. But yeah, absolutely wonderful. Not perfect, a little bit of work to do, but it's a game that's released in early access, and it feels as feature complete as it's going to be, and it's mainly just polishing and balancing and that kind of thing. But the total opposite to Quinterra, where there are a couple of different mechanics, but they're knitted together into one really good, solid package and not fighting against each other for your attention.
Yeah, I heard good early word about that game. It seems to be getting a fan base together. So, yeah, sounds like it's doing the right stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you see that's what early access should be, where you've got almost, and you mentioned Hades before, which does it really well. But you've got, you basically got your game as good and ready to go as possible, and what you're looking for is final feedback. So yeah, absolutely spot on. Lovely game. Still some improvements, but I really enjoy my time with it, and I'm glad I finally got round to playing it. Cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, adding kind of key features is one of the subjects of the next game I've been playing. So there you go, segue. I love the fact that it's a thing that we always ruin segues by talking about our segues. I think definitely that's a Cockney Miyamoto level of channel identification. Yeah, exactly. But I've been playing R-Type Final 2. So I've been playing it since 9 o'clock last night, not continuously, although, that's a temptation. But yeah, it's a game that I kickstarted. I haven't actually got my Kickstarter edition because I backed a physical copy, and I always knew I was going to be buying it on Steam anyway, so I can have it whizzy and flashy on my fast PC and use my joystick and all that. But yeah, I've managed to put 2.5 hours on it already, so that's not bad going. and it's really great. I will talk about it more over the coming weeks, but just in terms of, because it's a Kickstarter, it's actually more professionally polished than I expected it would be. But there are a couple of little things that could go back in it. Like, a really big one is, like, you can, for the first time I think in R-Type, you can change your ship speed with a button rather than having to collect a power up to change it, and it defaults to a slower speed than I would pick as my default. And a lot of modern shooters, you can set in the options what it starts on. So that's, and there's a couple of little bits, but generally it's minor nitpicks like that aside, it's a very polished R-Type shooter. And so far, early days, but so far level 3 I'm up to, it's really good, and it's looking like it might be up there with the greatest in the series. So yeah, exciting so far.
So just to touch on this then, is R-Type Final 2, is it a full-blown brand new sequel, or is it a remaster stroke remake of a previous R-Type?
It's a brand new sequel, and it's a direct sequel to the final game, which obviously ironic, as we were talking about in last week's podcast with the name Final. But it's a direct sequel. So the quirks that made Final what it was were that it had 100 spaceships to unlock, all variants on the original, and with some special ships thrown in there. So it had Mr. Heli, which is from another Irem game, and a few other special ships, and but they were kind of variants on different types of the R9 and the other R-Type craft. And playing it through, there were different routes and through the levels, and they could unlock different ships, and playing as different ships unlocked other ships. And so it was really clever in that, and it was intended as a living kind of mausoleum / museum of R-Type history, as much as it was a game. And it's really weird that you've got a sequel that does the same thing, because that was totally intended to just be the last you ever saw of it. But it works, it still works. So there you go.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more of that. It's R-Type is the one that whenever someone says to me about a STG,
well, you remembered. Yeah,
it's still funny. Anytime I hear about a shmup or anything like that, it's always the first one I think of. It's the Wayne Gretzky or Michael Jordan or Pele of shmups. I think it's the one that you go, that's gone above what that genre is. Yeah,
it's very much chess to Gradius, or Gradius is checkers. It's slower, more contemplative, as slow as shoot 'em ups ever get. It's still fast, but slower than Gradius. But those two are the two at the top, back constant, locked in battle, for which is the best. But I think it's probably R-Type.
Yes, I think it's the one shmup everyone's played, surely, at some point.
I would have thought so. Although young people will have no idea. I was at work, and a lot of the people I work with now are a lot younger than me, to the degree where the 30-year-olds are saying to the recent graduates, "Oh, do you remember such and such?" And they're like, "No." And like, "Oh, do you remember this?" "No." It's like, I'm like, oh God, I'm another generation above that in terms of remembering. So that makes me feel very, very old. But anyway, they're like, "Oh, you're into games, like, what are you playing?" And I named them, and they're like, no.
Have you played Fortnite, mister?
Yeah, pretty much.
We should get them listening to this. We can introduce them to the world of video games.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this, work people, this is what we play, and it's not just you's never heard of him. Like, loads of people probably never heard of him. There you go.
Yeah, but no, I might go back and try and see if I can dig out R-Type. We're getting arguments over video games here as it goes, with young people. So before I get on to my final game for the week, it's not the only games I've been playing this week, it's the final game for the week. Edith has been sort of like really getting sort of like playing loads on a Switch. She's been sort of like hammering Animal Crossing, which is I love watching her playing. Just like her, I want to say her childlike wonderment, but she is a child. So her wonderment
just
with
wonderment.
yeah, just wonderment of playing games. But we also got for her, came through the post, Pokemon Snap, and just her joy at trying that was just something else. She's such a character. She's playing it, she's doing the intro, and then she's doing it, and she turns around, she goes, "Oh my goodness, this is the weirdest Pokemon Snap game I've ever played in my life." I was like, was you with someone else in 1999? Was you wasn't here in 1999 when the last one came out, Edith, but
but technically she's not wrong.
No, yeah. But no, she absolutely loves it, and it seems like a really fascinating game. Absolutely murdering the review scores at the moment. It's like 10s and 9s.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was expecting maybe 6s and 7s, but one of those games where I'd play it and go, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, it is a 6/7 out of 10, but it's fun. Who cares? But no, it absolutely obliterated expectations.
But what is the Snap part? Because I'm guessing it's not the old card game that
photography.
We call Snap. Oh, right.
Just going round on rails taking photos of Pokemon.
So it's like a rail shooter, but the shooting is just photography.
Yeah, and you get scored based on the photo you take. So what the Pokemon are up to, how many different ones are in there, how much of the actual Pokemon you've got. So if you've got them like you've got a really good picture, but there's a bush obscuring them, you'll get less points and things like that. And it's got an online ranking system, and yeah, I'll talk more about it in a future week when I've played more of it. But yeah, she absolutely loves it so far.
Cool.
And she's splitting between that, Mario 3D World, and say Animal Crossing, and Smash, because she loves Smash.
Yeah, Nintendo really have that corner of the market totally covered, don't they?
Yeah. So there'll be more with Edith, and we'll talk about that down in a little bit with that before we finish the state of play with mental health gaming.
Cool.
So the actual final game I've been playing, and I'm going to try and be nice because I don't want to upset my flat, but it was a bit disappointing, unfortunately. But I've been playing Buildings Have Feelings Too.
Okay.
Which, be unsurprised to know, is an indie game because, I do love an indie game. And it's a city builder stroke city management game. But the buildings are sentient. And the base core of it is, you still got to sort of like put certain buildings in certain areas. So you can't put residential next to factory buildings and stuff like that, because obviously the people who live in those residential buildings won't like it. But you've got to have commercial that provides to both and all that kind of thing. But the hook on it is that the buildings sort of like they are, I say, sentient, and they have requests, so they have hopes and dreams and things like that. And they age, and you get some buildings like sort of go that I've had enough of life now, so please demolish me. It was like, well, that's a bit dark, but I get it. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. It's going, I've finished my purpose, let's go to Switzerland, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the hook of it seems really, really good. It's like this really lovely 2D thing. So it's not like a big 3D world builder. It's on the 2D plane, and you kind of go from sort of almost like decade to decade. It starts off in like 1900. You go decade to decade, and it's almost like individual levels. And the concept of it is so interesting that I had such high hopes for it. Visually, it's beautiful, like almost like these hand-drawn cartoon things. And each building does have emotion to it, and you start to feel for the buildings. The problem is, it's a bit one note. And by the time I finished the first level, I felt I was done with it.
Yeah.
And the hook of, oh my god, this is really cute, and it's like really good seeing these buildings be like this, was gone. I don't know what they could even do differently about it, because everything about it is sound. Mechanically works well. The style and the character of it, spot on the whole. The idea of the buildings having emotions and wanting a purpose and stuff like that works really well. It makes it different enough from your traditional city builders, but retains enough of the mechanics of a traditional city builder that it works there, so you can go into it. It's very hand-holdy, but I think that's in a positive way on the whole. But even when you get sort of like really deep into it, it's still almost like a glorified tutorial. I was waiting for it to let me go a bit, but it never does, which is a shame. So each individual part seems decent, but just doesn't work. So the only thing I can liken it to is I love popcorn and I love corn on the cob and things like that, and I don't know, I love coffee, but mix that all together in one and make me eat it in like a mashed up in soup, it's not going to be good. Together, no, not happening.
Yeah,
it's just got so much love poured into it that I can't put my finger on what. I think it's just literally a case of some things just don't work. And that's it, I think.
Well, also, if you felt it was hand-holdy and a bit simplistic and then didn't develop,
then it really
might
must
just
have been.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wasn't actually going to say that out loud, but yeah. But yeah, it might just be aimed at a different market. It might be why your family who are younger and or maybe don't play games as much aren't as bothered and they're happier with it. Maybe.
Possibly. I mean, I did a game with this when I do something where I was thinking I've got such a strong feeling about this on the negative, because you know me, I'm generally really positive about games.
Yeah.
I always do go, right, is it just me? Am I just not getting it? And generally, unfortunately, a lot of the critics are saying a lot of the same things, that it's just for what no one could put their finger exactly on what's wrong with it. But again, it's why I love indie games. So to get on the positive side of it, I always like to finish on a positive when it comes to this. It's why I love indie games, because someone's had a go. They've made something and they clearly love it, and they've made a game for themselves. It's not worked, but it will find a audience of some description. Even if it's just maybe because it's not a bad game. Again, there's bound to be people out there who will get something from it, and I enjoyed little bits of it. So it's not me going, oh my god, this is awful. I just can't put my finger on why. I'm not going to stick with it. I'm not going to go back to it. But again, you think 15 years ago that had no chance of ever making any impression on anything. So again, it's why I love indie games. They've tried something, it's not worked, but hopefully it gives them the experience that they can maybe take parts of that and do something different with it. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad it exists and someone got to make something they clearly love.
Cool. Yeah, that is good.
But yeah, that's it for me with games. I don't know if you've got any more.
No, yes and no. I mean, it's not hardly worth talking about because I've only managed to put 2 minutes on it, but I did get the release of Mr. Driller Drill Land on Switch, which is a remaster, just simply because it was £6 and that's dead cheap.
Was that download or physical?
So it was one of these weird code in a box things. So if anybody wants a spare box, or they've got Driller Drill Land, if there was ever a physical version but not the box, then hit me up on the email and I'll send it to you. But
code in a box is the worst. I mean, we started getting physical games because we've got 2 Switches, so it becomes easier to have physical. Yeah, if I want a box and I want something, I want it physical. I don't want.
Well, yeah. What's the frigging point of having something cluttering up your shelf for literally no reason?
The only thing I can think is as a gift. That's the only thing I can think. But then that's a waste of plastic. We're meant to be saving plastic.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Well, I feel terribly guilty anyway, even though it was so cheap. But on the flip side, I will make sure it gets used in some way. I'll either give it away to somebody who's going to use it, or I'll reuse the box. I'll swap it for one that's broken or something. But I do feel bad about it.
That could be a collection to have. A collection of used code in a box cases.
Yeah.
The definitive collection.
Yeah.
I think Mortal Kombat 11's that as well.
Ugh, horrible.
It's lazy. And the fact that they done it with MK11. Come on. That's poor. And Mr. Driller, that'll fit on a cartridge. I'd have a cart of that. in my collection.
I know. That's incredibly cheap of them. But there you go.
But it's a good game, actually. You'll enjoy that.
Yeah, the 3 minutes I've put on it so far have been good. So yeah, cool.
I love Mr. Driller. Again, I'm not very good at it, actually, but I love Mr. Driller.
I'm terrible at it.
I might boot that up later, actually. But I've also picked up, I've done a few trading, because obviously we can go out to the shops now. So I traded a few old PS4 games and stuff like that, and managed to pick up Persona 5 Strikers, just on the side, on the offshoot of this. Sometimes, when you pick up live, so you get your second-hand games, and obviously, like, any codes and that have been used within it. And, on the Switch, like, you can redeem your gold points from the cartridges.
Oh, I always forget to do that, yeah.
See, I'm glad there's people like you, because there's people like you who still trade in their games, and you pop the cartridge in, and you go, I'll check it and redeem it, and you get your 50 points, you get your 50p extra back. So it's just a weird aside. I've not played any Persona 5 Strikers yet. It's just I traded in. It's a game I want but didn't ever really want to pay out for, because I didn't want to pay 40 quid for a game that I might not get on with for a while. So I thought, traded in, it's pretty much cost me nothing. So I picked that up and got 50p bonus.
So we've established Pokemon Snap is about the card game.
Yeah.
And Persona 5 Strikers is about footy, yeah?
Oh my god, I could do that. Persona 5 Strikers is a Musu game.
Okay.
But it's by the people who do the Dynasty Warriors, and they've done the Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors, the Ultimate Warriors. Oh my god.
Warriors, I like that.
Oh my god, they should do the Ultimate Warriors.
The Ultimate Warriors.
Mosu with all wrestlers in it. Oh my god, there you go. That'll make that. There you go. That'll be better than any of the recent WWE games that have come out. But it's really weird. So it's got like all the actual fighting part, apparently, is all like proper Mosu. But it's a Persona game. An absolute Persona-ass Persona game, apparently.
Wow.
So one, great. I'm glad they've gone down that route rather than just stuck a bunch of Persona characters into a Mosu game and left it at that. Two, if you're able to fit pretty much a Persona game in there, where the bloody hell is my Persona 5 Portable Edition?
This is a good point.
I want it. I can't play it. I've got Persona 5 on the PlayStation 4. I can't play it. I cannot play a Persona game on a big screen.
Is it licensing rights or something?
I don't see how, because Joker from Persona 5 is in Smash. It's Persona 5, I think, has come out on PC, or is it Strikers only come out? I don't know. But I can't see why it's PlayStation only. Unless, the only thing I can think, but no one said anything it's to do with rights. It's not like a Tetris situation where only certain things can come out in certain places, because, again, just release it in Japan and put an English language option on it, easy. But I don't know. I'm hoping it's going to be maybe a big reveal at some point. So I'm not actually going to play much of Persona. But just a weird aside. That's a game I'm not playing or haven't played yet. So, moving on. We're not really going to have a big talk on mental health stuff, because I've just been all over the place trying to get back into a routine. Because my vision, I'm about 80% back with my vision now. So I could actually start playing games. And I looked at my list of games that I managed to pick up just prior to my surgery and in the weeks after, when I thought it would be done soon. There's a bit of a backlog. And sort of being able to play them all and then write about them, my head just can't get around sitting down and doing lots of writing. So what we're going to be doing is having not a restructure of things, but I've been looking at what we're doing at the moment as a group, what I want to do moving forward, and how we're going to structure that. So first and foremost, this podcast is cancelled. It's not. This podcast stays as it is, how it is. Okay, we apologise for the release dates a bit all over the place at the moment, but Stu started a new job. I've got activities with kids and that need to be fitted in, and so on. But so it will still come out weekly, just a little bit scatterbrained in terms of what days it might come out. I'm also going to be doing a secondary podcast that is going to focus purely on more in-depth game chatter. So it might be chatter about one particular game. It might be 2 or 3 games, but just more in-depth, more discussion and review based on that side of things. that podcast will also be added to video and put on YouTube, as well as a monthly roundup video on games as well. And I'm also going to start a written mental health diary that I plan to do writing daily, almost as an actual daily diary, and then releasing weekly on the site. So we do the mental health side of that. And that stuff I plan on doing sort of like almost starting within the next couple of weeks. I'm going to go back to streaming, but what I'm actually going to do is, rather than stream myself and try to have conversations with nobody or anything like that, I'm actually going to show sort of how much joy I'm having watching Edith get into gaming and her joy with gaming. So there's going to be a lot of streams with Edith, mainly playing Switch stuff. We'll play some stuff on the PC, but I'm going to bounce off her, she'll bounce off me. It'll be entertaining, and why she just brings me so much joy, and why that sort of thing's really good for your mental health as well. So that's going to be the streaming side of things. And I'm also trying to set up different interviews with people in the gaming industry and people who work with mental health and things like that, just again to bring it all round, because I did start off doing a lot of the mental health side, and then it got sidetracked by the games side of things as well. But I want to kind of bring it back round now and structure things out. So loads, absolutely loads on the docket. I know it's all been a bit quiet of late, but that's what's happening. And yeah, just want to thank everyone for continued support on the whole. Stu, you haven't quit yet, have you?
I'm still here. Yeah, no, it's cool. No, it's really good ideas, and it's weird with the pandemic because it opened up a lot of opportunities for podcasting, and because especially because there's a lot more time on your hands, but also then it kind of disrupts, like you said, what you do with the kids and when they're around, and then when you restart work, are you in the office or are you not office based? Were you ever office based? All sorts of weird stuff. But what you talked about is really cool, really exciting. Sounds like a good opportunity to have a podcast that I'm not on, so that we actually get some listeners.
Yeah. All we've got to do is find a podcast that I'm not on either.
Oh yeah, no podcast. That'd be ideal, wouldn't it? We have no podcast. We'll probably have tons of listeners.
Yeah, I mean, the other podcast we run that we're not on is that Giant Bomb one. They get lots of listeners.
They do, and yeah, we stepped away from that, didn't we? We've been very hands off. Yeah,
and the Easy Allies one, we didn't do that one as well, and we let them get on with it.
Oh, I'm a silent partner in that. I just let them run it.
Yeah. I don't know. We're also going to do kind of what's going ahead with the site, the podcast, the videos, loads of stuff coming down the line. I'm not going to just throw it all in one go, but the first thing I'm going to start is the mental health diary and the secondary podcast. Those will be the two immediate things.
Cool.
Am I done with my podcast? Nearly. I'm going to hand over to Stu now, and he's gonna finish off.
Indeed, I will.
Did you want to come and say goodbye? Do you want to sign off for the Seeds? Do you want to say goodbye to everyone for me? Yeah. Come on then, come here quickly. I mean, I'm not trying to fire you, Stu, but Edith wants to come and say bye-bye.
Ugh, my replacement.
Right, come on then, into the mic. Say bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Send us money on Patreon.
Send us money on Patreon.
Go, right. Give us money on coffee.
Give us money on toffee.
There you go. Thank you, Edith.
Nice. Yeah.
See, now if you don't donate now, you're going to make a little girl cry.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I often beg for coffee, but in even more a high-pitched voice.
So we're going to pass over to Stu to actually sign us out professionally.
Oh, professionally. Yes, that's me. Honest, Gov. So have a great week, everybody. As usual, follow us in all the usual places, like and subscribe. Send an email to podcast@mentalhealthgaming.com if you want to ask any questions. I promise we'll actually bother to look at them and read them soon. And other than that, please do stay safe, stay sane, and take care.